Hello, Steve Anderson here with Workamper News. We are here for the segment 3 of the 5 things you need to know before you buy an RV. There's 5 very specific things that Mr. Cooper's covering, and we are getting ready to start number 3. So we encourage you to sit back and listen up as Mr. Cooper, the Texas RV professor, shares with you about the third thing that he wants you to be aware of. That is to know the different types of RVs and to be able to have a better understanding about which one might be right for you. What Mr. Cooper is going to be sharing with you is about the different types of RVs to help you understand which one might be right for you. So let's join Mr. Cooper as he jumps in to our number 3.
3, you need to know the RV types. And it won't take you long. If you haven't already been doing your homework, you'll find out real quick there's 2 classes. RVs is the umbrella, and under that umbrella, we have the motorized and the towable. Now, you're going to meet a lot of these old timers, and they think their motorhome is the RV, and your travel trailer, your fifth wheel is the camper. And they don't. It's really strange. It really is. And you think, well, it's just best not to correct them. They've been around a while. But the RV is the category. It's the umbrella that these temporary housing, and that's what they call RVs. It's supposed to be temporary housing, even though many of us have lived many, many years in them. And so if you look at the very top, that's a Class A. Now, you can have them as gas or diesel. You'll see those big old motorhomes got the diesel engine in the back and everything. They call those a pusher. Now, what it was just they brought a chassis inside that manufacturing plant in bay number 1. Somebody drove a frame in there that had an engine and transmission in it, and they just drove it in. They were sitting on a plastic bucket or a plastic seat, and they built the box over all of the frame. And then we have Class Bs. Now, Class B was the next stage that they made. And all it was is they took those, remember those Good Time vans or those Scooby-Doo vans, and they trick them out where, these babies have got all the bells and whistles that the big motorhome has. You've got the microwaves, you've got the air conditioners, you've got water heaters, furnaces, refrigerators. They just may be smaller versions of it. They even have bathrooms in some of these. So showers and bathrooms. So you can get a lot squeezed into that Class B. Now, the people that are going to rent or they're going to stay in a Class B, maybe a solo or maybe a couple, but they typically are the people they plan on going and seeing things, and they're using this as their transportation as well as their home. And then you have the Class C. So on the far right-hand side, the Class C was really started out as a truck chassis. It's like somebody took and whacked off a big old 1-ton truck behind the driver's seat and slid a box on the back. And you see how they typically project over the cab. They're trying to squeeze all the space they can. Class C's can go into all kinds of different lengths. They even have, I think, the one they call the Super C, and that's the one you see a lot of times a lot of these racing teams are using. It's got a big old monster truck chassis on it, the engine and transmission like a Class A would have, and then they're pulling their race car trailers back there where they've got 2 or 3 race cars in it. It's got their mechanic shop. They are a full operation. And a lot of people will run a business out of something like this. So, the Class C has a lot of versatility. Then let's move down into the motorized. Now, the fifth wheel, that's the larger, typically the larger of the trailers. And typically a fifth wheel, you can see where the hookup is. The kingpin, it's got the same kind of kingpin that a semi-trailer has. Because what they're going to do is they're going to put the weight of the tongue of that unit over the rear axle of the pickup or the van or pickup or the truck that's pulling it, okay? I've seen some of these guys that are taking these on-the-road trucks, these big old semi-trucks, and they do conversions, and basically they're pulling their RVs around with those big old semis, and then back behind, between the RV and the cab, they've got a place where they're putting their smart cars. You can do all kinds of things with these things because they give you so much versatility. Then on the right-hand side, we've got the travel trailer. Now, the travel trailer is the most commonly purchased unit that you will see. Because if you were to take the Class A's, B's, C's, fifth wheels, and the pop-up tent campers and put those all in one category, and then you look at the travel trailers, we sell 5 times more travel trailers than we do all of the other classes combined. because what it is it has so much versatility, and it also has the tongue pull. So that means people are using their pickups or SUVs or whatever, that they have a hitch pull on the back of their vehicle, that they can pull these things. And they come at different sizes, different price points, different weights. I mean, the options are endless. But typically the travel trailer doesn't have quite the storage space that the fifth wheel does. So what'll happen is, unless you're somebody who's like has an Airstream, because that's classified as a travel trailer, but typically, unless you're one of those individuals that are into that Airstream lifestyle, because that is kind of a unique lifestyle. Usually when a person buys an Airstream, they have very different needs and they have certain desires. And I will tell you, I've lusted after Airstreams. I really have. I think they are the coolest thing. I like the way they look. I mean, they're just cool. A lady said, well, I really like them too, but I'd really like to have a little bit more space. So guess what? We went with fifth wheels because we wanted more space. It was either that or the Class A. Now, Anderson's went with the Class A. And sometimes we'd go over there and kind of lounge around because they typically have the bigger living room. And, it's one of those typical that you have 642. In other words, it has cocktails for 6, dinner for 4, sleeping for 2. So you're going to hear that term flashed around, 642. This is a 642 unit. And so when they say that, oh, okay, cocktails for 6, dinner for 4, and sleeping for 2. Now here's your motorized. Here's just some pictures, and I'm sure you're looking at them and say, "Oh yeah, I've seen those on down the highway." Hopefully you recognize these because you've been doing your homework. And isn't it amazing when you start looking for something, all of a sudden your brain is programmed to where you see that unit on the road more often than you ever seen before. It's like, wow, all of a sudden there's more of these out on the road than I've ever seen before. Well, you're paying attention more. And that's what's going to happen. You're going to fall in love with a certain brand, a certain floor plan, and you're going to be looking for that thing over and over again. Whether you go to RV shows or you just see it running up down the highway, or if you stay in an RV park, you'll see it. Now, let's do a little bit of comparison here, okay? These motorized units are going to come either with gasoline or diesel engines. They've got to have some sort of power plant. Typically, the gasoline because it's got a lower price point because the engine doesn't cost as much. It's going to have lower maintenance cost. And here again, oil changes and things like that. Uh, but here's the thing about it. The gasoline do so much better on flat land than they do the mountains. So if you're thinking about doing a lot of mountain, the Rockies, Appalachian Mountains, up and down the East Coast. Let me just tell you, some of those mountains out of Pennsylvania and places like that, they're steeper than you think. And those gasoline engines are pulling. I mean, we used to run an F350 with that diesel engine, and between running it diesel or running one that had gasoline, it was like night and day going up down those mountains. So I can just tell you, it makes a big difference. So you've got to kind of know what you're going to be doing with this. But now here's a thing to keep in mind as you're out here looking. So if maybe you find a used one, typically banks consider if you're over 75,000 miles, they classify that as a high mileage vehicle. And so what they're saying is that this engine and transmission, rear end, suspension has had quite a bit of work because that 75,000 miles or more, it's had the box on its back. So it hasn't been running up down the highway just carrying just lightweight stuff, like you by yourself or your passenger and maybe a suitcase. No, you got the box, everything, it's there. So they consider 75K. So sometimes that gives us an issue when we go to buy them, because keep in mind that engines work a lot harder and that transmission's worked a lot harder. Now, if you look at the diesel, yeah, it may have a little higher price point to price in at, but maybe a little bit more maintenance. But the thing about it, there's a trade-off here. Look at the high mileage on these. I mean, these are having some of the same mileage that you see on the big semi trucks, because on these big diesel pushers, it's the same engine, it's the same Allison transmission that you see in the big diesels. So, I mean, these things are built for the highway miles. Mountain driving, you got the airbags, so you got the smooth ride. And this transmission, this Allison transmission, it's not a problem. It'll downshift, it'll upshift, the engine brakes, all those different things make a world of difference and protect yourself, protect that engine, protect that transmission. Now, they also have a higher resale value because people know that basically these things were built like a brick. I mean, they just are solid. I mean, and a lot of the RVers, once they get 100,000 miles on them, a lot of them are already programmed. They think, well, I've got 100,000 miles. And if it'd been a car, 100,000 miles does sometimes scares it. So what a lot of times is people will trade those in. So you can pick up a unit that's got 50, 75, maybe 100,000 miles on that diesel, and basically that diesel engine doesn't even feel like it's been broke in. Because if you run compression tests on those pistons, on those engines, they don't seem to have any wear on them if they've been maintained. So keep in mind, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to pull behind you? Because if you're going to pull, some pretty good sized vehicles, trailers, some full size trucks or Jeeps or whatever, the motorhome diesel may be your way to go. Because if you try to pull it with one of those gasoline engines, not only that thing is struggling to get the box up and down the highway, but it's really going to struggle when we tie a big unit on the back of us if you're running gasoline. Now the towables, here you are, tent camper up at the top left-hand side. Depending on the part of the country you're in, they'll call it a pop-up, pop-out, tent camper, and it's basically a step up from people having tents. Great things. I mean, you talk to so many families that started out this way, and they just basically moved on up. Now, over on the right-hand side, that little J flight there, now that is what we call a stick and tin. Yep, stick and tin travel trailer. So basically, what it was is they the wood structure, the studs inside are small or thin wood. What they'll do is they'll take usually a 2x4 or 2x6 and they'll rip it. That will be your studs, and then they'll put sheet metal on the outside. Now that's one of the lower price points. But let me just tell you, they've got some that have that bonded laminated walls. They've got that fiberglass outside walls. They've got all the bells and whistles on the inside, 2 air conditioners, so you can get them tricked out however you want. But here again, think about that power cord. Is it going to be a 30 amp power cord, or are we going to go the 50 amp at 240 volts so we can run, 3600 or 12,000? Now, in the bottom left-hand picture, this is a fifth wheel. Now, this particular unit, I was looking at it. Um, it was at one of the plants, and they were doing some service work on it. And I was looking at it, and I thought, man, that's a nice looking unit. And then we even had the door open where they could put the generator in down there. Notice the slides. I mean, when you move these slides out, this particular configuration, if you notice on that front slide, there's 3 big windows. Underneath that far window is the washer and dryer. And so the washer and dryer's in a slide out. So I mean, they got these things all jammed up, tricked out. I mean, it's nice. And you're going to pull it with a 1-ton truck, because this thing will probably weigh in less than 20,000 pounds. So a 1-ton truck shouldn't have any problem with it. It's got all the options. And we're going to look at that here in just a little bit of what you're looking for when you're going to be buying this vehicle. Now, this one on the right-hand bottom side is a toy hauler. Now, toy haulers are one of the most versatile units, and it is probably right now one of the most highest selling floor plans, because you can get them in a motorized, you can get them in a fifth wheel, and you can get them in a travel trailer configuration. And the reason why they're so popular is that back room gets to be used for so many different things. If the younger kids, they'll maybe put their dirt bikes, their jet skis, and all the other things, their camping gear, and they'll pile all their buddies and girlfriends in, and off they go. Then as they grow up and start having kiddos, next thing you know, you got to have a place for the soccer team or the little league baseball team, so they can have a place for their away games, because up there, up against the ceiling, they've got those drop down bunks. So the whole team can sleep in here. They don't have to rent these hotels, and they got everybody there. And then as they move on up the line, then pretty soon people start saying, well, I'm going to run a business back here, and I'm going to put my office back here. And I mean, that's what we did. We had units that we basically had in the beginning when it was built. We had to say, look, we don't want to make it look like a garage. We want it to look like the same furniture that was in the living room and the kitchen, the same cabinets, everything. You can even have a bathroom back there, and you have an extra air conditioner. And we turned it into offices. And when you walked in there, it looked like an office, because Lady E, we had the drop down tailgate so we could load stuff and load furniture. And she would throw that gate up, and she had curtains across the back. And you walk in there and you just think you are in an office. She had it set up to where the happy jacks, the rails on the sidewalls that are chain driven, take the bunks up to the ceiling. Well, she had the bunks removed and put desks on them, so she could push the button and we could take the desk all the way up to the ceiling. So we could load up stuff in the bottom. And so when we got to where we were going, we unloaded out of the back and bring the desk down. So there's all kinds of opportunities. And so you see that this thing's being used for so many options. And it's up to your imagination, but just realize there's options out there for you, and you don't have to be stuck with one thing or one style. Shop around, look around. There's all kinds of things going for you. Okay. Now let's take a look at this thing, and this is a data plate. I took this off of one of the units here at the school. Now, this happens to be a travel trailer. You'd see the same data point on a pop-up or a fifth wheel. If it's going to be a motorhome, they'll have a VIN plate, and typically you'll see it either in one of the back closets, or you'll see it. They like to put it many times right behind the driver's seat so they can get all the information. But this particular one was for a travel trailer. Now, I've highlighted some things because I want you to see what's going on. Okay, let's start with the very one. See where it says VIN? It's got the circle around it. The 10th position, if you counted it, there's 4X, 4T, FL. The 10th position happens to be a K. Now look at the little chart over here to the right. This chart tells you what year K represents. In other words, K happens to be for a 2019. Now notice it starts at 2010, it goes all the way through A, B, C, D, F, G, H. They skip I because it looks like a 1, J, and K. Now, look at that K. So we know that this is a 2019 model, but look at the other circle up towards the right. See what it says? This thing was born on 5/03/2018. Now, some manufacturers will do a model change in the spring, and that's this particular brand. That's what they do. They make their changeover in this early spring. Other brands will make their change after the 4th of July, late summer, early fall. And typically they make that change so that way when they go to the RV shows, because they have a huge show for the dealers to go to there in Elkhart, Indiana. I mean, they put on the feed, they put on the display for those guys. Every model that's going to be available to be sold will be there at that show. So the manufacturers, those that haven't made their change that spring, will be making their change that fall, getting ready for the September show that they'll have in Elkhart, Indiana for the dealers. Okay, so what we know is this thing was put together in May the 3rd of 2018. It's classified as a 2019, right? We got that information. Drop down a little bit later and look and see where it says GVW rating, GWR. Now, this unit has been manufactured to where it can actually be sold in Canada as well in the United States. And it's for that reason they're using metric, and you even see where they're using French Canadian in the yellow tag up above. Okay, so let's look at it. The gross vehicle weight. Now, the gross vehicle weight means everything that you can put in this unit is going to, and the unit itself combined cannot weigh more than 9,909 pounds. By law, if the manufacturer or the dealer adds anything to it over 150 pounds, they have to make a modification to that data plate before they sell it to you and me. So if they add, say, a huge satellite system and a whole bunch of solar panels, and they go over that 150 pounds, they're required to make that change. Now, if you and I buy it, they don't require us. It's kind of like cutting the label off of a mattress, right? The store can't cut it off, but by golly, you and I can, because we're tired of fighting that thing. So when you look at it, you now know what this thing weighs. But let me show you something that ties into this. Look at that oval down on the bottom left-hand side, front axle weighting. So it means gross axle weight rating. The front one is 4,400 pounds, and the rear is 4,400 pounds. Now, if you add those two together, what do we get? 8,800? Wait a minute. The gross vehicle weight can't be over 9,909, but yet the axles only have the capacity to carry 4,400 pounds apiece. So that's 88. So where's the difference? Well, and they say, but what? But wait, there's more. And what they used to say on those late night commercials, I was watching one of those the other day. Man, they don't ever give up on that. But here's the thing. When you get ready to start buying that vehicle, you need to know how big a vehicle you're going to need. And what's going to take place is you have to keep in mind, if you go with a travel trailer, 10 to 15% of the gross vehicle weight of that 9,909 pounds, 10 to 15% of that weight is going to be carried by the hitch on the ball on the back of the truck, back of the Suburban, back of the SUV, or whatever you've got that you're pulling it with. Now, if it's a fifth wheel, 20 to 25% of the gross vehicle weight. So now all of a sudden you got a fifth wheel that basically you can do a whole lot more with, because you're going to put that tongue weight on that hitch. And that's one of the reasons why fifth wheels are so popular, is because they have the ability to carry so much more weight. So a lot of times the fifth wheel, yes, may cost you a little bit more, but the trade up to get there is not that bad because of what you're offsetting. You're saying, okay, if I go ahead and add another $5,000, another $10,000, I can get this same floor plan and maybe even more space in a fifth wheel combination. But you've got to also know, when you do that, you've got to know what vehicle you're going to buy, because that vehicle that's going to pull it's going to make all the difference in the world how things are going to go for you out there on the highway. Now, having worked at dealerships, a lot of times the salesmen are not as fully versed as they should be. And I'm going to be really polite when I say that. I won't say any more than that. But long and short of it is, they say, yes, that, oh, your truck, oh, yeah, that'll pull that, and it'll pull that trailer. Well, if you don't know that for sure, you don't know it till you hook onto it. And by then, it may be too late for you. And so the salesman said, well, if we're going to put airbags on it, so it won't squat and it'll do good. But what they don't tell you is that, okay, we got airbags on this thing, help it to lift the load, and hey, nothing wrong with that. I put airbags on vehicles just to make sure I could carry the load. But the thing about it is, what about the transmission? What about the engine? What about the rear end? And what about the brakes? Do the brakes have the capacity, now that you put that bigger vehicle on the back because the airbags will hold it? Do you have the braking power that you're going to need? And let me just tell you, it's a scary thought when you're coming into some of these big cities. Like we topped the hill coming into Atlanta, Georgia, and we had that huge fifth wheel on the back of that 1-ton truck. And let me just tell you, I saw red lights and there was people all over the place. I don't know why or what was going on. And all I could do was shut that thing down. I mean, if I hadn't had that bigger truck, bigger brakes, that engine exhaust, I don't know that we'd have made it. I mean, we came within probably about 2 car lengths of the vehicle that was involved in some of those accidents. So I'm just telling you, sometimes you got to do your research on this so that you don't just say, let's buy cheap, because sometimes you need more than that. And I want to show you something. I want to show you so that you'll say, okay, well, what do I need to buy? Well, in today's world, there's a magazine out there, and this is kind of their claim to fame. I mean, it is so popular that even the RV manufacturers will reference it many times in their service manuals or their owner's manuals. It's called Trailer Life Magazine. Now, they're owned by Camping World. They're owned by Good Sam. So I mean, you and Marcus, the prophet. It's his team. It's his. But these guys have been around for years. I mean, as long as I can remember, there's been Trailer Life Magazine, because what they'll do is they have all these articles and stuff. And I'm not pumping them for this. I just want to say they have got one of the best guides in the country that I have found. And if you just go do a web search and just go to look at Trailer Life Towing Guides, just search that, and it'll pop up their site, and they have a drop down menu that has these towing guides on it. And so I just went ahead and pulled the 2020 and the 2018 so I could give you the looks of it. But I want to show you something here, okay? Lady E and I were shopping. We wanted to buy her an Expedition. Now, we got a very large 5500, a Ram 5500. We've got the diesel engine, so we could pull a 24,000-pound DRV toy hauler that we were using. I mean, that's what we lived in for 3 years. And then before that, we'd been Redwoods and we'd been Landmark. So we've had a chance to have a lot of RVs, okay? But this is one of the things that Trailer Life does. I like how they take it out and they're going to list all the different vehicles out there, cars and trucks, pickups, everything, SUVs, they're going to list it. But here's the key to the charts. You can see all the different classifications. And I want to show you something that had an impact on us. Look at the gear ratio. So the gear ratio, there's a trade-off there. If you're not familiar with how rear ends work, it's how many revolutions do you get out of that engine, and then that translates to how many revolutions do you come out the rear axles, turning the wheels. There's always a trade-off. If you want more pull, more torque, you're going to have to compromise and give up mileage, because you're going to be wanting to get, the higher number, the 392s, the 410s, the 430s. I mean, that big 5500 we're running has a 430 rear end. Guess what? We had to sacrifice the mileage on that thing because we wanted more pull. So what Lady E wanted was the best of both worlds. And like I told her, I said, honey, we're going to get to the point. There's a medium point, and if you want more fuel economy, so because she was buying it so she could take her and her daughters and her granddaughters and they can go do things. I said, if you do that, if you want the fuel mileage, we're going to have to sacrifice the towing. And so, no, I want the towing. So we had to find a compromise. And let me show you what we came up with, okay? Now, here's the expedition that we bought. This is Lady E, if you haven't met her. She's the kitchen lady. She wrote the RV Centennial Cookbook that was adopted by the RVIA during their their centennial celebration. And quite proud of her, the things that she has done. But she was a big asset to the manufacturers of the RVs that we lived in, because they asked her to come and talk at some of the rallies. So she'd do seminars on the kitchens, and then she'd meet people over there at the dealer locations where they were selling units, and she'd talk to people and share her experiences, and many times could answer questions that the salesman couldn't or didn't know how to even go about. And she would help guide these people through it and help them find the right unit for them. Well, look at this expedition. If we had bought it with one rear end, the F, now look at that. So if we bought it with the F, which is the 3.31 versus what was the other one? The T, I'm sorry, the L, look how it changed. We went with a different rear end. So by changing the rear end, we could change the towing capacity, because she has her eye on a unit that's going to weigh more than 6,000 pounds. So guess what? We have to be careful, or we had to be careful when we bought this thing, that we bought one that had the rear end, that had the tow package, and the tow package is critical, because it's going to have a cooler like a little radiator that's going to cool the transmission fluid, so that the transmission doesn't heat up when you're going up and down those mountains. Has all kinds of other features. Has built-in brake controller, so we can lock down the electric brakes on this thing. So it is so critical that you find the unit either that you own or the one that you're going to be looking for, so that way you kind of know how you match the two. This last week, the couple that I was telling you about that had the two little girls, they went out and bought them a pickup. Now, everything was sheltered in place. So they've been working with the salesman and talking with him about different things, and they'd ask about certain vehicles, and he told them a certain one. He said, this will do this, this, and this. And they said, well, here's our trailer. This is our pin weight that we're going to have, and this is what it weighs. And he come back and said, oh, yeah, that will handle it. So they went and made the appointment like they're supposed to, wearing their little mask, and they went and bought this truck. They brought it back, and we were looking at it, and one of the other instructors said something to him, said, are you sure? Have you checked this? Well, guess where they went? They zeroed right in on this. And it's kind of like, if they had just come to us, or if they had just known about this, they wouldn't have bought that truck, because when they found out this thing was shy of 1,000 pounds capacity to be able to haul the trailer. It was a nice looking truck, had all kinds of bells and whistles, but it didn't have the rear end, didn't have the transmission, didn't have the suspension to be able to handle the trailer, the fifth wheel that they had bought. And they're retrofitting it, getting all ready for their girls to have their own place in the back. So they called the dealer and they said, look, we got this problem. And they said, well, it'll haul it. He said, no, sir, let's take it back. So they even went back and looked at the spec sheet for that manufacturer. And the salesman come back and said, well, I don't think I can do it. I can't do anything to help you on that one. I don't know exactly the conversation that took place, but they'd only had it for just a very short period of time. I mean, we're talking less than a week. And next thing I know, they're spending the day over there and they're having conversation with management. And they come home with a different vehicle that has the capacity to haul the trailer they had. And like they told me, they said, our payment only went up $20 a month. and we're okay with that because and like the young man told me, he said, I need to make sure my girls are safe. He said, my wife and my two daughters, I need to make sure they're safe. And so he said, it's a little bit bigger truck. And he bought one that had the dually. And he said, it's got a bigger butt on it. And we were laughing about it. I said, yeah, you got to swing wide with those. But he now has a vehicle that he can feel comfortable and know he bought the right thing. And so I always want to encourage people, look at the truck. If you're going to be using an existing vehicle that you have already, then go and look and see what its capability is before you start shopping RVs. If you're already started shopping RVs, then go in here and start looking at the trucks that you're thinking that you're going to have to buy and know what you're going to have to get into. Okay, because you've got to marry these things so that way you have success. Because this could have been disaster for this couple, because if they had not been able to work the deal out with this dealer, and I will say I was quite proud of this dealer because we have sent him several customers from the campground to him. So to his favor, I'll have to say he did the right thing with them. He did good by them, because if he hadn't, I'd have had to say, if anybody asked me about it, I'd have to say, guys, let me tell you a story. And dealers understand that they got to have their market, and they see that you and I as RVers, we're going to meet a lot of people out on the road, and so we can have an influence so much on what's going on in the buying of vehicles and equipment. Okay, so keep that in mind. Take a look at that Trailer Life towing guide that's for the year of the vehicle that you own, and see what it's capable of doing. And guys, please don't let people talk into, oh, we'll put extra suspension, we'll put airbags on it, we'll do this, we'll do that. Guys, airbags are great. I've run them, I have them, because I needed to take I was dipping a little bit in my rear end. And so by putting the airbags in, I raised it up so where my front end went down. I wasn't wearing my tires out so quick. And I felt like I had better steering control. But it did not change my stopping power. It didn't. I mean, it didn't give me more. So what you've got is what you've got, and you need to make sure you have enough to get the job done. So don't mean to preach. I just, when you see situations and you realize people have bought more than they should, or bought less than they should have bought, and they've got themselves teetering on the edge of disaster. Because there's going to be those times, and it always happens, something's going to take place, an emergency, or something's going to happen, crosswinds or whatever out there. You're going to be thankful you had more vehicle than you needed.
All right, thanks for joining us for this third segment. I hope you're learning a lot from the Texas RV Professor. You can learn even more about taking care of your RV and all the various training that we have available for you at the National RV Training Academy in Athens, Texas. So check us out at www.nrvta.com. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next segment.